officials toured Mountwood Park today, taking in new additions to the Volcano Museum and surveying the land where new amenities are planned. Our Chase Campbell was there.
Wood County Commissioners Blair Couch and Bob Teebe toured Mountwood Park Monday, joined by Sheriff Rick Woodyard, County Administrator Marty Sufer, and Park Manager Jeremy Cross. The group started in the Volcano Museum, which recently opened a new display area featuring historical artifacts and documents, models, and a diorama from Volcano's heyday and the early days of the oil and gas industry. Commission President Blair Couch, who also sits on the Mountwood Park Board, says he was glad to have the opportunity to show off the new additions to the museum.
It was a chance to show off the museum that's coming along awesomely, and they do have plans to add more exhibits. Very well done. I think anyone would enjoy going just to see that, let alone take a fishing pole and then fish. There's something for everybody out there.
Couch says he believes the museum does important work by maintaining records and items pertaining to Volcano's history.
I think people when you lose your history, you lose your identity. And Volcano and all that was a hopping place. And that's part of our heritage.
The group also viewed an area of the park that'll be the site of a new campground with cabins, trails, and other amenities, thanks to a grant from the Abandoned Mine Lands Economic Revitalization Program.
Bike trails are a big draw, and adding new flow trails with the AMLA grant, adding camping on the lake side of the park. That's something that people clamor about, and we're going to provide it. I'm just really excited to see what happens over the next 2 years.
The AMLR project is currently in early surveying and planning stages, overseen by engineering firm Thrasher. In Walker, Chase Campbell, WTAP News.